Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the B&H Virtual Event Space. Very happy to welcome to the event space Mr. Devin Allen. Devin, welcome. How are you today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. An absolute pleasure to have you. I want to welcome everybody at home watching, whether you're joining us here on Zoom, Facebook, Vimeo, or even our friends over at YouTube. We're excited to see you, or in my case, virtually see you. But thanks for joining us here today. Today, we're going to be talking with Devin about everything from A to Z. So if you have any questions that you want to get into him, please feel free to go ahead and drop the questions as you see fit, whether you use the comment section on any of the other streaming sites, or if you're joining us here on Zoom, you can use the Q&A tab. But Devin, as I told you in the green room, most people, they know who I am. They're like, we're done with you. We don't care what you have to say. But why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself, and yeah, we'd love to know.
Yes, I'm Devin Allen. I'm a self-taught Baltimore artist, most known for my documentation after the death of Freddie Gray. Also known for my documentation in Baltimore after the death of George Floyd, where in both instances it landed me on the cover of Time magazine. First instance was in 2015, making me the third amateur photographer ever with the cover of Time magazine. And then from there, kind of decided to stay in Baltimore. Most people are like, it's time for you to go to New York, but I wanted to stay in Baltimore. We're a fairly small city. I didn't grow up knowing any photographers, so I wanted to start teaching. So stayed in Baltimore, started teaching, took a full-time job with Under Armour. So I've been shooting sports, so been literally winging my whole career, trying to figure out as I go in this very vast world of photography. And I'm still in Baltimore, still teaching, giving out cameras, and just, documenting everyday life here in Baltimore.
Excellent. Awesome. So you got a ton of stuff going on. There's a ton of stuff that you've done that we want to talk about. And I think the best place to really start is kind of at the beginning, right? Every great story has a great beginning, and I think that's always where the greatest place to begin is, because you can't get to the end without starting from the beginning. So, you mentioned it in kind of introducing yourself. You said, you're a self-taught photographer, that you didn't go to schooling for this. What intrigued you about photography? How did you kind of venture down that alley and decide, like, hey, I want to pick up a camera and I want to start going out and shooting things?
Yeah, it was like one of those things that happened so fast, in Baltimore, like art is not something that's really easily accessible in a lot of places in the school system. So we don't really get subjected to it like a lot of other, communities might do. So, I never thought of being a photographer. I think I knew about photographers who took pictures like at parties. The closest thing I knew to a photographer was like my grandmother, who had always had a disposable camera. Oh, let's take a picture for Sunday school. You look cute in your little suit. Or we're gonna take a picture at the family cookout, and that was the first photographer I actually knew when I thought about it. But I had a good friend of mine who, we were polar opposites. Like, he was the straight A student and I was the knucklehead. We played basketball together, and he went away to school to Iraq. Then I had a daughter pretty young. And that kind of prompted me to start, wanting to change my life and stuff like that. And he introduced me to poetry when he came back from Iraq. And for a while, I would throw parties on the side to get some extra income, because I was working a regular 9 to 5 and I just needed some extra money. But the poetry got me intrigued at first. But then, this is around 2011 to 12, Instagram is coming out. So if you have an iPhone at that time, only Instagram was only on the iPhone. So you had everybody leaving their Blackberries and Androids trying to get on this app with just pictures. So he's like, this Instagram app, let's do this thing. So we would use imagery to basically promote the poetry night. He had this little Nikon Coolpix camera. What I found, I started liking the human interaction. You put a camera in front of a person, oh, let me fix my head, or let me do this. The energy shifts when a person's getting their image taken. I kind of started to lean towards that more so than the poetry. But I didn't know where to start. So I turned to YouTube and Google and started Googling famous Black photographers. And I remember the only name that was popping up was like Gordon Parks. And it was just like a whole bunch of stuff on him. And I just went down this rabbit hole of looking at his interviews. I would go to Barnes and Nobles and no one told me how expensive photography books was. So I just would sit on the floor, flip through them, and then put them back. And, I said, I want to be a photographer. So in 2013, I tried to go purchase my first camera, and I didn't know how expensive that was either. And then when I saw the price point, I was like, oh, Lord, I guess this dream is not happening right now. But then I reached out to my grandmother, and I called my grandmother, what are you doing? She was like, you want something. You don't just call to check on me. You want something. And I said, she knew. I said, do you have a Best Buy credit card? And she said, yes. I said, I know you do, because you just got the new refrigerator. Do you have any space on there? I really want this camera. I really want to do photography. It's my thing, And then she was like, all right, stick with it. And then that's when I got my first camera in 2013.
Wow. So grandma is owed a ton of thanks and a ton of gratitude, because that's it. You see, grandmas are always the best. They always take care of us, right?
Yeah.
That's it. We need more grandmas. So how did that kind of, process then? So, you got your first camera, and now, you're going out, and maybe you can talk a little bit about that process and kind of figuring out your niche, so to speak. I'm sure you had certain things. You mentioned you were going out and you were shooting these things for like the poetry nights and stuff like that. But obviously now you're documenting a lot of, the civil unrest and things like that. How did you get to that point? Was it seamless where you knew that this was something that you were really passionate about and you wanted to document, and you knew that obviously in America, that's where we are, and Baltimore is where you live. Was that something that you knew you had to cover and you felt drawn to, or was there a process to that kind of led you to that finding?
Yeah, it was kind of like a process, because when I first got the camera, it was just like it was more so like a hobby, and I just would just carry my camera everywhere with me. If I was going to work, or it didn't matter, I just kept the camera with me. My friends, and it was funny because a lot of my friends didn't actually believe in me. They actually made fun of me because it wasn't common that, a guy, that you grew up with out of nowhere said he was gonna be a photographer. They said, you gotta go to art school for that. And, but then some of my friends actually supported where, some of my friends wanted to be models. So I started doing headshots. And then some of my friends was like, I want to be a rapper. All right, let me shoot your rap video. Even though I don't know what I'm doing. I just was trying to shoot any and everything, and then I really started falling in love with like street photography, just walking around and just finding things and capturing moments. And that's what I initially fell in love with. But the turning point when I really started to take it seriously was, I had two best friends, and they were murdered in one weekend. So one was murdered Friday in front of his house. The next day I went to go pay my respects. And the only reason why I wasn't around him as often as I used to be, because I was just so adamant about taking pictures. So right after I left to go take pictures, my other friend got killed. And that was kind of like a wake up call. And this was a month after I got my first camera, and that actually happened around this time back in 2013, and I thought like that was like the universe, God, whatever you believe in, was like, this is your thing, because if it was not for that camera, you would have been right alongside him. You might not have been here. And, just from studying Gordon Parks, and then around that same time, I never really understood what he said, like my camera is a weapon. And I've read those things, but I took it with a grain of salt. I didn't understand what he meant until 2014, the following year, Mike Brown passed away, at the hands of police in Ferguson. And years prior to that, I had a friend named Sean Gamble who was murdered by Baltimore City police officers. And I remember it being protest, but where I was mentally, I just was like, why are we protesting? This is life. This is just what it is. I can't do anything about it, because growing up in Baltimore, you just go through so much. You've been subjected to so much. We kind of got this. This is life. This is how it is. We born into it. So we just kind of already kind of defeated mentality. But when I got the camera in my hand, I found out about a solidarity march for Ferguson in Baltimore. And I said, I'm gonna go. So I went, and I just remember hearing the chants. I just remember the prayer circles and the energy and capturing how emotional these moments was. But actually, you can actually feel like you just left inspired, that you didn't want to just sit down anymore. And that's what kind of like prompted me to, documenting that. And then when Freddie Gray passed away, that was here in Baltimore. And I felt like no one can tell that story. I didn't know what I was doing or how I was going to get the work out. I just went out, took pictures, and put them on social media.
So I think that's a great segue into talking about, the about Freddie Gray and the death of Freddie Gray, and that's kind of, I think maybe that's a pivotal moment in time for you as an artist and as a documentarian and what you're doing. You know, obviously you were out there, and like you said, you know, you're from Baltimore, and you know, if you Google yourself or anything like that, you know, you grew up very close to, you know, where this encounter took place. And so when you went out there and you were documenting that, did you ever have any intention? Was there any thought in your mind of like, hey, I'm doing this and I'm gonna get this, you know, to the media. I'm gonna, you know, use this to be able to spark conversation and to spark the thought of, you know, stepping back and having people think about this and think about what's going on and how do we change this and how do we grow from this? Or, you know, was that just chance?
I wasn't really thinking at all. What I was really thinking about was the fact that Baltimore has a really bad reputation. You know, people are scared to come here. You know, they know it's for the wire. A lot of the poverty and a lot of issues. You know, so a lot of times if Baltimore was brought up in a conversation, it's never in a positive light. So, you know, and I wanted to make sure that the narrative that was going to be put out there can come from the horse's mouth. You know, so when I set out, you know, I just said, I'm gonna dedicate my page to Freddie Gray. And with the Mike Brown protest, I actually reached out to like a local, to like the Sun paper locally, and try to get some of the work published. I couldn't even get a response back. So I was like, my work must really be bad if I can't even get a no. Like, you know, because I got the email from like a friend that was just in the paper. So I was like, yeah, can you connect me with them? I just want to get this work out there and, you know, and show that Baltimore was in solidarity. Couldn't even get a response. So this time I said, well, I'm not going to go that route. I'm just going to dedicate my social media to whatever as this unfolds. Because I knew, because of just growing up here, that the city and the people here are very resilient. You know, so I knew we was going to take directly to the streets, you know, and like me and Freddie Gray, like we have mutual friends, you know, because Baltimore is really small. You literally like can bump into anybody. It could be a cousin or someone's mother, because Baltimore is so small and intimate. So I just went out and just every day just kept shooting. And around at this point, I had started taking photography seriously within that year, because, you know, I was like going to New York, you know, giving out business cards, going to events. You know, I started going to museums, and I was studying really hard, trying to find my own style. So I had switched, you know, my job to working 12 at night to 8 in the morning, so I could shoot or have all day to shoot. And then I work with young adults with autism, intellectual disability. So when they sleep, when I get in the house, I can edit all night, and, you know, because I'm not allowed to go to sleep because I'm actually at work, so I have to sit up. So I'm editing. So, you know, I was literally out all day just shooting everything, and I just kept putting it up. And initially, a famous DJ, DJ Drama, you know, DM me on Twitter and say, can I repost this? What's going on? You know, I love Baltimore. And I told him what was going on because no one wasn't reporting. And my process was, I wanted to move a little bit faster than media. So what I would do is I would shoot and try to get the best shot in camera, and then just Wi-Fi to my phone and just try to post it on Twitter and Instagram while I was still on the ground. And that was what would be my process the entire uprising. And from there, from DJ Drama, and then all the other like rappers like Usher and Rihanna, and it started to go viral, you know. And then it got to the point people just was coming on my page and taking pictures of my page, and it just, you know, I went to sleep with like 10,000 followers. And then I woke up with 20, and then interviews by the BBC, and then Time called me. It just happened really, really fast. I didn't know what I was doing at all.
And so, I mean, social media, it's an unbelievable thing. And to think about, you know, how it's utilized and how it's, you know, changed a lot of how we think and the way, you know, the media is shaped. You know, when time came knocking, so to speak, that's kind of the old phrase, right? You know, they came knocking on the door. I mean, what were your feelings like? Were you like, holy moly, this is time? Like they want to, you know, talk to me, like take us through that a little bit, and that conversation and how that went. And, you know, what that kind of meant for you in terms of, you said it before that, the local Sun was like, hey, we don't even want to answer your email. We're not interested. And now Time, who's, they're a huge publication. They've got millions of people's eyes on them. They're reaching out to you and they're saying, hey, we want to use this image on our cover. Take us through that, the feelings, the thought process for you as somebody up and coming, how that kind of catapulted everything.
It happened so fast. Once, I ended up doing an interview with the BBC, and I believe that's how they got in contact with me. And so the first time they called me, I actually hung up on them like 3 times because they was calling from like a block number. I don't answer block numbers. I just, I don't know who this is. And I finally answered.
That makes 2 of us.
Yeah. Thought it was like a bill collector or something, or, I didn't pay my car note that month. But the first time they called me, I was like shocked. I thought somebody was playing on my phone. It was this guy, Olivia. He had like the weirdest accent. I'm just like, and I like talking to my mother, like, I think it's Tom on the phone. She was like, what you talking to me for? Talk to them. And I'm like, okay. So they was like, what's going on in Baltimore? Because a lot of people didn't know what was really going on. They knew about Freddie Gray, but they didn't understand like what was going on because we were protesting while Freddie Gray was still alive. So when he passed away, everything erupted so fast. A lot of people, I feel like, were trying to scramble, get stories, and no one knew what was really going on. And so it started off with just like conversation, what's going on. They would literally call me. I would literally be on Penn North outside with activists and people from the community while everything is going on. I'm like, I have to call y'all back. Like I'm literally in front of the National Guard right now. It started off with just like a little blog. They put the work out there. I was like, all right, cool. They put the work out there. They interviewed me. They thought I worked for a publication. A lot of people did. I'm like, no, I'm from here. I'm just out taking pictures. And then Paul Moakley, the editor, reached back out and said, hey, we want to give you a full spread. Like my biggest fear was what was going to be the narrative of the images. Like once you release these things into the world, you don't really, as photographers, we try to control the narrative of our work, but it's really, really hard. Definitely when things are going viral, things can be taken out of context and things like that. So I just, asked him like, please, like, don't take it out of context, and I got to send some images over. And mind you, I don't know anything about copyrights. I don't know anything, but Paul and those guys over at Time like really walked me through the process. I would talk to them all day, kept them updated. And then eventually they called me and said, hey, we want to, can you send us this image too? And it was the cover. And it was like, they called me back later. I was at work and they said, this image is just so powerful. We want this on the cover, but we already have a cover. Get your hopes up. And then in my eyes, I'm like, well, you already gave me a blog post. The work is getting out there. So people are seeing the work. People are starting to understand what's going on in Baltimore. I'm good with that because the real story is getting out there. You're seeing, only thing you're seeing on CNN is like, Baltimore's on fire. Baltimore's on fire. It's like, no, the whole city is not on fire. It's like a little pocket, it's one CVS, but then I'm able to show you that and everything else in between, the prayer circles, the community cleaning up their own community, everything, but the good, the bad, and the ugly, you're seeing it all through my lens. And I went to sleep and then I woke up, my Twitter kept crashing. And I'm like, what is going on? And then when I finally was able to log in back into my Twitter, it just says amateur photographer snags the cover Time magazine. As I'm looking at this, they called me and said, did you see? And then it just happened like that. And it was like, it was really bittersweet. It's something that I got to carry with me every single day, not even just with, Freddie Gray, even with George Floyd now. It's like that, literally like, my career literally built on the broken back of Freddie Gray, and I always reiterate that because a lot of people, when they think about the work, they don't even understand the trauma and the tolls it takes. Definitely when you're documenting your own community, like, because I'm not, at the time, I really don't consider myself a journalist because I'm documenting my own community, but I'm not on jobs. I'm not to other places. Like, I'm literally in my community, so it was kind of bittersweet, get the Time cover and getting harassed by police at the same time. So it was bittersweet. It was a lot to take in though.
Yeah, I think you raise a great point, and maybe you can talk just a little bit more about that. How does that affect you? Obviously, this is something that's near and dear to your heart. This is something that's happened in your own backyard, and just the last 20 minutes of talking to you, I could see the passion. I can hear the fire and the desire to show the world, not just the US, but the world, that the fact that, yes, this is going on, and there's some, bad stuff happening, but obviously you're documenting because I think you also want to see, and maybe I'm wrong in this, I don't want to make assumptions, but you want people to see that beautiful side of Baltimore, because obviously within you there is that homegrown feeling, that tight knit community of people, like you said, where you can walk down the street and you can see, an uncle, a cousin, a friend of a friend's brother, things like that. How difficult is that for you to, I guess the right word would be to sort of live up to that expectation of properly exhibiting your hometown in the proper light that you as an artist believe it deserves?
Yeah, it. Oh,
It's all right.
Cat food.
It's okay.
Yeah. Oh, sorry about that. That's the cat getting reminded to get the cat. But yeah, it took a while to really understand what I was doing, or how I was going to maneuver this new space that I was in. And one of the biggest things, I'm really big on allowing people to tell their own stories, and I understand I'm equipped to tell certain stories. And I always try to be respectful of other spaces that I might not have the best understanding in. And that's something that, that I try to, that's like one of my mantras that I try to, like, as I document, even my own community, if I go to another place that's similar to Baltimore, I try to be very respectful of where I am when documenting. But, the toll is, just going out and documenting that stuff, and then you get catapulted. And now it's like interviews, art shows. Now brands want to work with you. Now you get to travel, now your dreams are happening, and in the back of your, but not even the back of my mind, but literally in my head, I'm thinking like, this man is dead, and and I'm getting all my flowers, and the only thing I can think that I can do is, like, I'm a photographer, so I need to start using this new platform that I have, that he in this community gave me, and I use that to teach, and I visit schools, and I try to be very accessible to the community, because, people polarize you, and I always I'm gonna stay down to earth. I wanna make sure I'm still in my community working, and that's something that I live and die by. That's why I decided to stay here. But even just building the style, of just documenting and how to frame things. So a lot of times I had to take a step back, like, what am I doing? And it was like, I'm not so much documenting. I really like to look at myself as like a dialogue creator, because I'm not trying to force an idea down anybody's throat that Baltimore is beautiful. I'm trying to show you something, in a unique way with this medium, to make you just look at it a little differently, or have a conversation about it. And I really started to understand what the work meant when I did a show. And one of the guys came to the show who's from like the Sandtown, Winchester area, the area where the projects are, and the area where Freddie is from, was at my show. And they're talking about the imagery, but he don't know the guy next to him is a Baltimore City police officer. And they're having this conversation, and it's so I'm just listening as they talk about the work, and they're agreeing on all these points, and like, this is my friend. He hates police officers, and he does not know that, and I go over there and I say, hey, this is officer so-and-so, and this is my friend so-and-so, and they just like tripped out, and they just like the whole energy it didn't change, but you could tell they was both awkward after that. But that's when I start understanding the power is documenting the moment, but it's also about all those conversations over the years that's going to come after that. And that's what I aim to do definitely in Baltimore. If it's, and I try, and people say, why you never title your work, or you'll do a show, but you never title your work? Is because I just know how my brain works. Is when I see a title or I read a caption, I start thinking in that direction. So I stop titling and putting my own personal feelings on things. You know, I'm looking at gentrification in my community in the changing landscape of Baltimore. Here's the image. Now I want you to have a conversation about it. We could talk about it, but I want you to digest this imagery. I'm gonna shoot it in an artistic and a unique way to draw you in. But it's a serious conversation that needs to be had, and it took me a while to really understand that. But that's kind of where I stand at in my work. I try to just create things that make you want to talk about it, or make you want to get out your seat and go see what that's about, instead of just, you know, I think a lot of times we just judge from a distance, and we don't understand these different spaces and peoples and different cultures. We rather look from, from an hourglass or something, from, a microscope or some far away. But I want to create something that want to draw you in and bring you closer to my community, and it's been doing that. People have been more interested in Baltimore. They actually start researching it, understanding the history. How did Baltimore get into the position that we're in now? We have so many Black leaders, but Baltimore still has 300 something murders a year. But people are starting to understand that because they're starting to want to do the research to understand.
Awesome. That's absolutely amazing. And I wanna progress past just, talking about the whole documentation of Freddie Gray and the murder and things like that, because some of the stuff you're talking about is kind of present, and I want to jump into that a little bit. I think you're doing some great work out there, and I want to highlight a little bit of the stuff. One of the things I know that you started was Through Their Eyes, correct?
Yep.
And maybe you can kind of dive into that and kind of talk us through what it is, why you started it, what you're doing with it, so people can understand that. I think it's a great organization, and I think you're the best person to sort of highlight that.
Yeah. So after the Freddie Gray, being on the front lines, I was seeing kids, because that's what a lot of people understand, the uprising and everything that happened with the riots and everything. The youth sparked that. Kids that are in high school going up against Baltimore City police officers and the whole nine, But as we went into they went into a semi martial law. They had to be in the house at a certain time. You had to be off the street unless you was going to work. People was getting detained if they was caught outside past a certain time. But schools were shut down, public transportation was shut down for a while. But I would see kids riding their bikes through police, no fear. And I'm just thinking wow, I wonder how are they digesting this moment? And then even with photography, for me, I just learned how therapeutic it is, allowing myself to reflect on something physically. I can take an image and myself, I can look at it and say, all right, this is how this makes me feel. It's very therapeutic. It helps with my anxiety, depression. I just feel like it's a very good tool. Where some people don't feel like talking about their emotions, they can use an image to do that. And I was like, all right, well, I want to teach photography. So I was like, I don't even know I'm still learning myself. So I'm going to teach somebody else. But I just remember starting to GoFundMe, and then it got I got all this media attention, so right away, got the time cover in May. By June, I had to GoFundMe up. I'm gonna start teaching. And first 2 weeks was $3,000. The creator GoFundMe, the CEO donated $1,000. And I was asking for around 10. And I was gonna buy some nice point and shoots and stuff like that. The real simple things that if it break is not a big deal. Little things that can take a beating. And I was like, well, they opened up this kids safe zone for kids that lived in the area of Sandtown, Winchester, and then Gilmore Homes, where just to get the kids off the street, they took an old laundry mat, put some games in there, and they would have snacks and stuff to get the kids off the street. So once again, Baltimore small. My godmother said, I got this friend. She about to start this center. I know you trying to raise money. You should go down there. And I said, that's perfect, because I had nowhere. I was trying to figure out where I was gonna go. So raising this money, this guy DeRay, who's also from Baltimore, who was a big time Black Lives Matter protester, invited me out for coffee. I told him what I wanted to do, because we never met. Then he called me back and then said, hey, Michael Skolnick and Russell Simmons is looking for you. And I was like, what they want with me? And he was like, I don't know, give him a call. And I gave him a call, and they donated $25,000 to me to start the program. And then that allowed me to, I bought a bunch of DSLRs and everything. And I was like, can't believe this is happening. I throw the cameras in my car and I drive down to the center. them kids cussed me out. He said, why do you want to learn photography? I don't know. I don't care about no time cover. We don't want to learn that. That's boring. Right. And then I was like, all right, cool. They're like, why you ain't making no money? You're a photographer. Photographers can't make no money. I said, well, he's like, what you do other than the time cover? I said, well, around this time, I'm in conversation with Under Armour, and I'm like, oh, well, I'm going to Asia next month with Steph Curry to document it. Then they lost their mind. They was like, give me that camera. And I was like, I got you now. And then I started teaching. And from there, just the whole process of Freddie Gray, it was so much funding and nonprofits and organizations just popping up everywhere, getting funding, doing things, making all these different promises. So I at the time, I'm like, all right, well, I got my career that's just starting to happen. I want to stay in Baltimore. So I opted out, like trying to start a nonprofit right then and there. So I said, I'm going to do this on my own, whatever help the people want to give me, and I'm going to do it grassroots. So I have to deal with nobody, so I taught down there for some years, went back to my old neighborhood, had kids write essays. And then the essays that I approved, they got to get into a program where they can literally go to the librarian and say, I want to take this camera out today. And then they documented their school day. Like the one kid was like, I hate the lunch. And I was like, well, then document the lunch. So she documented school lunch, the sweaty apples and stuff she hated. And then, we did an art show. And then they got to sit on a panel, explain their work. They had a whole gallery opening in the 8th grade. That gives them a sense of pride in themselves, get to see their work printed up. It gives them, they like, oh, wow, I can't believe I just did this. It makes them feel good about themselves. It's a sense of joy in that. And then from there, I just kept working with kids, and then just been doing it for a while. I've been able to collaborate with Steph Curry in Oakland. I've been able to donate cameras to the Studio Museum of Harlem, and I did a little workshop there. So I do it in different ways because every kid is just a little different. Everyone's not the same. So some kids are not going to want to sit down every single day and work with this camera. Some kids, would just want to hang out with me, and then I would just be mentoring them, keeping them out of trouble. To let them know that I do care about you. I am here, I'm really from where you're from, so I understand what you're going through. So it's more so a mentorship thing, and then let you know that I'm a successful photographer full-time, and you can do this too if you really wanted to. So I work in a lot of different ways. I try to be flexible with it, on how I engage the kids, because, a lot of times kids go into these programs and the programs, are not built for them because every kid is just a little bit different.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely wonderful. And I'm interested from your viewpoint. You said something that we kind of laughed about, but you mentioned in the beginning, you wanted to start this kind of, program for the kids, and you were thinking in your mind, like, wait a second, how the heck am I supposed to teach these kids? I don't even really know, what I'm doing, but you went after it nonetheless, and you still figured out a way to make that work. How important is that to you? What do you find greater, the ability to create an image that will spark so many conversations the way that they have, or being able to sort of in your own backyard and beyond be able to mentor our future and have an impact with them that perhaps is greater than what you can see currently?
Yeah, definitely. I would take working with these kids over my own career. I could have jumped up and went to New York or went to LA, and my career probably would even went even bigger. Baltimore's a very small city. We're not, it's not a lot of news outlets here. It's not a lot of ways to make money. It's photography unless you have the clientele. You could probably end up doing a whole bunch of jobs you don't want to do. I've been lucky enough. I've been at Under Armour, for 6 years. They have been amazing team over there that I've been able to learn. I didn't go to school for it, but being at Under Armour has allowed me to understand the corporate side, ins and outs, or just meeting other videographers that have been in the game 20 years, or photographers, like my director, Jay Michaelfelder, who's been in the game for years, who come from the OG working with ads and, just amazing people that I've been able to learn a little bit from everybody. But I'm able to take that knowledge. The biggest thing is being able to take what I learned at Under Armour and other places to bring it back to the community. Because that's what I really want when it's all said and done, is when I go, I'm old, I got back problems, because I've been carrying around cameras all my life. And
don't forget the knee problems too. Those
knee
are going to be
problems,
rough too.
the cramping hands. And then kids say, oh, well, Devin Allen gave me my first camera. That's how I was introduced. Or Devin Allen came to speak to me at my school. Or I met Devin Allen through a Zoom link talk that I did in the 12th grade. Or I never got to meet Devin Allen, but his books inspire me and his story, where I came from. I want to, similar to like Gordon Parks and his legacy, how he inspired me. I want the same thing. So, the goal is that just have 100, 200, 300 Devin Allens coming out of Baltimore. So that brings me the most joys. But I do understand the accolades and keep climbing. Because a lot of people where I come from never got to reach this point. Some of my mentors, never, was able to reach the level visibly that I'm at. Because the times just were different. It had nothing to do with skill set, just with social media, more platforms, and the world is just different. So I want to make sure that I keep reaching, keep growing, get better, but also champion some of my favorite photographers with me, if it's the Photo Dre's or the Jamel Shabazz, or, a lot of my peers that I work with, the Joe Giordano's or, the Tom Mobleys, and a lot of these other photographers that I highly respect, champion them, everywhere I go, no matter what mountaintop I'm on, and always reaching back to the community. And, it's each one teach one. I just, I want to just see, anything I've done, like even when I think about it, being the third amateur photographer, ever with the cover of Time magazine is pretty crazy in this day and age, considering how long the magazine has been around. So like any doors that I do open up or places that photographers like me, where I'm from, never have gone, I want to make sure that I open those doors and keep those doors open for them also.
That's wonderful. And that's amazing. Just to kind of shift a little bit, talking a bit about, maybe shifting now to sort of current day, current days, 2020, that's when you were featured in Time Again, covering, documenting the murder of George Floyd, and, being in Time Again, and that kind of being a point, sort of a tipping point as well, when we saw the pandemic, the coronavirus, whatever you want to call it, the C word. We'll leave it out. We'll edit that out afterwards. But, can you talk a little bit about that? I mean, what kind of challenges has that presented in terms of being out on the streets, being able to document the things that you document, and just in general, even things like, getting involved with through their eyes, working with the kids and being able to interact with them. Schools have been closed, and finally they're getting back to normal, but they were closed for such a long time, and they were having to work on the computer with Zoom and things like that. How did that affect what you were doing and the message you were trying to put out there, and being able to continue to really get in touch with people?
It slowed me down a lot. Like the last 5 years up to that point has been, like an emotional roller coaster. Because I still live in Baltimore, and, when I go do these talks, I still deal with the things the community things, friends getting shot, getting killed, like I was like in Asia working, like the year before, I think it was like a year or so before COVID, and like one of my friends got killed, or, as I still push my career, still dealing with those things mentally. Like 2017, I became one of the first Gordon Parks fellows with my counterpart Harriet, and introduced to people like Swiss Beats and starting to get into those bigger rooms. And that's when I got my first Leica M, because Swiss Beats gave it to me, and then I always wanted a Leica M, so he gave me his. And when he first met me, but when COVID happened, I at Under Armour working, doing shows here and there, locally, other places. I started actually expanding into other things. With photography, as an artist, I'm always trying to grow. So I start mixing photography with, start building sets and stuff, and doing installations and performance art, mixing it different mediums together. I started painting, and then, I was supposed to do all these shows, and then boom, COVID hit. Under Armour, we all get grounded. So we're not traveling, we're not shooting anything. And it changed the whole work environment. For me, as a person that's like, I had to be around people. Now I'm kind of forced into sitting down and trying to still work and do my job creatively, moving into more of like an art direction, creating mood boards so other photographers can shoot things that's closer to them, that cities that might be more open where our athletes are at. So it was a real tough time, being stuck in the house. I try to like find other things to document. I started drinking too much. I was drinking like every day. Give them a glass of wine as soon as I get off work, as soon as I shut the laptop. But at first it was tough, but then after that, I got into like a groove where I start studying. All the things that I said I wanted to do, I could finally do. I start reading more, painting more. I got to spend more time with my family, and spending more time with my daughter because I travel so much. It started to come full circle. And then, but when George Floyd and all that, it was like, all right, well, I'm trying to think like, all right, I have to go into this protest is really dangerous right now. And I'm talking to my family about it. And they was like, you gotta be there, and, to be back on, because I never stopped. I've always been at protests for 5 years straight, 6 years straight. I've been going to protests since 2014 in Baltimore. So when to be back down City Hall during COVID, for this in Baltimore was just crazy. It wasn't. And then I think the biggest impact for me would be that the whole city was going through what we dealt with 5 years ago. I was already mentally prepared, to be on the front lines. I've been through it. I've been through my activist training already. I've been on the ground with other well-seasoned activists and activist groups for 5 years now. So I'm well-seasoned, and I found myself just helping other photographers mentally digest that. So I try to, like Baltimore got crazy a little bit. They shot rubber bullets a couple nights and things like that in the mix. But, Baltimore, we had been going through this and been through that already. So we was a little bit more not enraged as other places. And then also Baltimore, just the mentality is just a little different when we dealing with our own, the velocity of it. So I just found myself, same thing, go out shooting every day, working, so get off work. When I'm done my last meeting, I'm still on emails though, guys, but I'm at the protest, all night, and same process, shooting, putting it on, internet, but also making sure I'm reposting my peers that's in DC. Once again, like I said earlier, I respect people's spaces. So it's just me. That's just my moral compass. Like my boy in DC, I'm gonna just retweet your work. That's your community. You understand it better than me. All right. I see my boy Brandon Rough Draft is in Oakland. Let me make sure I just repost his work. Or if I see my boy Stevie Sweatpants up in New York, or some of my guys in New York, I try to repost their work, so people can see what's going on. And once again, I got, Paul reached out to me, sent the work out, and he's like, no, did anyone pick this up for a cover? And I was like, no. He's like, it's such a good cover. And then he came back like 2 days later, like, I wanted it to cover. And then they gave me the cover again. But it was kind of, once again, another bittersweet thing that I think I felt I wasn't as drained because I had been through it already, but the amount of brands that just wanted to align with Black photographers, as I sat on these photographers, of Black and brown photographers were blowing up. They're getting all the attention. They're getting the New York Times, they're getting their Times posts, they're getting all that stuff. These brands are reaching out. They want to do equality. They want to do all these things now that they should have been doing. And I'm talking to photographers on these panels and listening to the mental toll it's taking on a lot of them. And what I went through 5 years ago, I'm listening to how they're being taken advantage of. But me being a little bit more seasoned than some of them, I spent a lot of time just on the phone talking them through it. And that brought me joy, knowing that what I went through, what it was beyond just the photos that affected people in the world, even just my knowledge of being on the ground and me healing myself and telling my photography friends, like, yo, you cannot go outside every day. You got to take time off. You got to rest. You got to eat right. You don't got to be out there every single day. you're gonna burn yourself out. So, I did a lot of that during 2020 in that year.
So you mentioned something inside of that. You mentioned Swiss Beats. You don't know who Swiss Beats is. Go to Google. Do yourself. And we got to talk. You mentioned he gave you his Leica M, and so obviously this event, and there you go. This event is being sponsored by Leica, so thank you very much to them. And you're obviously now a Leica ambassador. And one of the things that you mentioned was these companies wanting to get involved, wanting to be behind these movements and start those conversations. So I think the proper question is, what about Leica for you aligned with you that made you want to be an ambassador with them and for them?
Always, I remember the first time that I went to like a photography like expo, and we went to it was Look 3 Festival, and I went with Instagram, and they did a spot on me, and that's when I met like Freddie Roy. I met like all these different photographers, right? And then it's like I'm like the little rookie, so everybody was just like so nice to me, like, oh, it's the new guy on the block, and one of this guy had a Leica M, like M9 monochrome, and he let me like play with it all day, and I was shooting with a different brand at the time, and I had, Instagram was like, dude, you on fire right now, because I was in New York Times, I had the Time cover, I was doing Yahoo and Flickr interviews, I was all over the place. He's like, they should get on you right now. And I went to go to like try to talk to a rep of this company, and they kind of just told me my work was kind of negative and just didn't fit the brand aesthetic. And I'm just like, wow, and then, a lot of I was kind of sad, and everybody was like, what's wrong? Like, you want a shot of whiskey? And I just told them what happened. They was like, oh, like, that's politics. They say, you're a young photographer. I was getting a lot of backlash around that time. A lot of people saying, oh, it's just a lucky shot. That's it for Devin Allen. That's his peak. That's it. He was like, he said, you gotta walk around with a chip on your shoulder from now on. A lot of the older guys were saying, you have to demand that space. He was like, you're young. He's like, you don't have a degree in photography. You came out of nowhere. So like a lot of brands don't believe you're gonna be around long. So go and prove them you're wrong. And that kind of lit a fire underneath of me. And I remember my first Leica was like a deluxe, but I really prompted to after playing with that guy's M. And then I met my boy Tom Mobley. He had the M240, and he let me hold that. And it just was like the build of it, because I was like, I'm tough on cameras. So it's like, I'm getting, tear gas, pepper spray, and hit with shit. Just the build of it is what really drew me to it. It's discreet and just beautiful imagery. And I just remember, like looking at the price point, I was like, yeah, I can't afford that, but I remember becoming a Gordon Parks fellow. The deluxe that I had met this amazing photographer named Freezer down in Baltimore, but he had, maybe he was like broke his camera or got stolen or something. And I'm thinking in my head, like I just bought this camera. It was like $1,000, $1,200. But I knew that in the position that I'm in, the direction my career is going, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be able to get another camera. So I pulled up on him. I love his work. He's like, he was on the ground. He knew Freddie Gray. He's from that community. And I just felt like he deserved it more than I did, so I gave it to him. And I spent like the next year or so just taking pictures on my phone, as I saved up for it. And then when I met Swizz, he was like, don't go anywhere. We at the Gordon Parks Gala. He's like, you hanging with me tonight. And I'm just like, oh, I'm just like in family, So we having a good time. And I turn around, and his uncle hands me this Leica M8 with the 21 millimeter. Then I instantly started shooting with that. Never shot with such a wide lens before, so I'm struggling. Then I start shooting landscape, and then Leica Bellevue reached out to me. And when they reached out to me, I was like, wow, and then I went out there, they did a show inside their brand store. And it was an amazing feeling. We did a photo walk, and I got to meet all these amazing other photographers out in like the Seattle area. And like, I never did anything like that, and same thing, when I went down to Leica DC, because they had a used Leica M240. So I called them and said, hold it. I'm about to sneak out of work. Hold it for me. I get off at this time. Traffic is bad, but please hold it for me. And they held it for me. And that's my M240. And I love telling the story because when I bought this, it was a birthday present to myself, and I saved up the money and I got my first book check, and I went down there and got it. They held it for me. And it turns out the guy, Tone, that I told you, let me hold and play with it before, it was his camera, because the M10 had came out and he traded that in. And I picked up it was his old camera. And he saw the nicks on it that he put on it by dropping it at my show and realized it was his camera, which is just crazy to me. It just also shows you just like the build and everything. And then I was just kind of hooked at that. But they always was just reposting my work, commenting back and being interactive with me. Before, over the past 3 years that I have been shooting Leica, they have always been interacting with me, reposting the work, you know, or doing a show at one of their branches. So the support, that alone enough was good enough for me. But then when they found out what I shot the time cover with, you know, for my style of photography, they were nice enough to send me the M10, and that's what kind of started that relationship. And they reached out and they asked me to be an ambassador. And then next thing I know, the news was at my house, you know. West Baltimore photographer gets sponsored, gets sponsored by, you know, major camera brand, you know, and then this, you know, the conversation, the intimacy between talking to them, you know, it's not like that. I've worked with, you know, just large companies and brands in general over the years, and just the camaraderie, the respect for the work, respect for other photographers, and just the respect for me, and then, you know, and how they interact with me. You know, it's not like they just using me like, oh, Devin, you're hot right now, you getting all the attention, but no, they actually support the work. I talk to them all the time. They always ask me, do I need anything? You know, they gave me tools to further my career. You know, what's next for you? I said, well, I want to move into fashion one day. I want to do these things. And, you know, I want to play with video too. I don't know. I just want to experiment, you know, and they was like, all right, cool. This is what some of our other photographers use that's in those fields. Try those things out. You know, pointers, knowledge, you know, so it's a real good relationship. I'm not going anywhere. I just love all of them. They just real respectful, really nice, amazing team. I was supposed to go to Boston this week, you know, but it snowed really bad. I was not trying to get stuck in Boston, but, you know, allow me to be a part of the campaign for the Leica M. You know, it's just another big accomplishment, not just for me, but just for every Black and brown kid, you know, that's coming from a place like Baltimore or a ghetto or somewhere where they feel like they're too small to make change or be impactful. You know, I just love the fact that they support like a small town, you know, photographer. So
yeah, no, that's absolutely amazing, and that sounds like a great relationship, you know, in terms of a brand supporting an artist and a vision. Now we did have some questions come in. John's joining us here on YouTube. He wants to know how's that 28mm treating you?
Goodness, I love it. Like you know, like I said, I'm so used to, when I first started photography, I didn't know what I was doing. So I was buying stuff that I didn't need. Like I'm walking down the street with a 7200 trying to do street photography. Like, what am I doing? Walking around with this bazooka, you know, but the 28 is just so compact, you know, even going out, and I'm shooting at these low, it's so light, you know, so it's just perfect for like a carry around with me all day. You know, if I have like my coat and this coat, I can just drop it into my pocket. You know, I was kind of scared at first because you know, I shoot like 35, you know, 1.4. I never go for a prime lens that with the average of that close at 56, you know, because I do, you know, shoot at 8 and I do shoot around them, but not being able to go, like if I'm doing like a portrait or a full, but I'm not able to get that bouquet that I'm used to. I thought it was going to bother me at first, but it doesn't, you know, and now it got me looking at even my own work a little different, but I love it. You know, I didn't think I would shoot as many people with it, but you know, that extra little space between that and the 35 is just like ideal and perfect for me, but I love it.
Awesome. Now, before we're getting close to that time, but I want to ask you, for everybody out there, for everybody who's going to watch this, who's watching it either live or is going to catch it on the replay, don't forget vimeo.com/bheventspace, YouTube, BH Photo. What do you want people who are getting started on their journey to think about? What should they, you know, obviously I don't think there's anyone better to sort of give advice on this, you know, from somebody who came just using a Coolpix camera, really not even before that, just the iPhone, and documenting with that. What do you say to people who are looking to get started, who are, maybe they're in the thick of it, they're really trying hard and they're just not having success, they're ready to give up? What's your advice to them as somebody who's kind of been through it themselves?
Yeah, it's so many things. I think the first thing, if you're like starting out, experiment, find your voice. I think a lot of times my biggest thing is I always tell photographers, like, social media is a gift and a curse. It will build you up, but it can destroy you really fast and take all the momentum out of you and make you not want to pick your camera up. But my biggest thing is, like, do research, study other photographers. I've studied so many photographers and get inspired by so many photographers, but try to find your style, because it's only one you. We're all unique in our own way. We all have our own stories. And then if you just start, and I always, like, tell people, start off with your family, start off things that's close to you, to build your skill and build your style, things you feel comfortable with, and have fun with it. It'll come. Social media, like I said, it's a powerful tool. Don't get too caught up in the likes. I found myself in 2015 stuck creatively because I had been doing, this black and white photography, this street photography. That's what I got likes on my page for. But if I posted something left field that might not to other people feel brand right for Devin Allen, it wouldn't get as much traction. I kind of would not do it, out of fear of not getting those likes or not getting those retweets. That can hinder you, so don't get caught up in the social media worrying about the likes, caught up in the following. Some of my favorite followers don't even be on social media, don't even have one, and they're doing really, really, really well. Study just looking at contracts, licensing, it's a really, really tricky thing. I don't know. I've seen photographers in some sticky situations over rights and licensing, stuff like that. So basically, yeah, study up on that and try to get on top of that. Also just try to create for yourself sometimes. Like, I know it's hard, definitely this day and age with, COVID, we starting to get back into the groove of things. Just, like, keep your camera with you. It should, if you can, get a small camera, a point and shoot or something. You have your phone, but just try to take one picture a day. And that's what I do. Just keep your brain and your eyes wandering. There's so many amazing things. A lot of times we always looking down at our phones. You're missing an image, and that one image can do a lot for you, So create for yourself, have fun with it. Don't let social media and, your fan base or your followers dictate what you create, because that will put you in a tight spot. But have fun with it, and don't get discouraged if you're not getting to where you want, where you're at. Like this, we're artists, so it's like this. Some you're gonna be riding high. Some days you're gonna get a lot of calls. Some days you're not gonna get any calls. Some days you're gonna get a bunch of likes. Some days you're not. It's all about sticking in there, hanging in there, and build a community around yourself. And that's what a lot of times I have a community of photographers that I can call on if I have any questions, or if I just want to hang out and get a beer and just, talk, or, so that community aspect is very vital to have, has editors, go get coffee, those relationships are what going to keep you afloat when you don't feel creative or you're not getting any gigs and things like that. So definitely build a community, an authentic community with people that actually genuinely believe in you.
Awesome. Now, for everybody wondering, because I'm wondering myself, I want to know what's next for Devin Allen. What can we expect?
I'm working on my new book comes out this year. We're finishing up. It's called No Justice, No Peace: From the Civil Rights Movement to Black Lives Matter, a collection of photography from 2014 all the way up to 2020. And I didn't want to do like just a picture book like I did the first time. So I actually teamed up with some amazing writers, like local writers like D. Watkins, and, amazing writers like Darnell Moore, poets like Jacqueline Woodson, and just some crazy writers that just, have these beautiful essays and poems, from all these different perspectives of around the movement and where we are today, and from the past and the present. So that will be out October the 11th. So super excited about that. I'm still at Under Armour, still learning. I've been there going on 6 years, and it's been a journey, so still there, still working, still learning. Um, trying to work on my co-direct my first documentary, with one of my friends. And he asked me to co-direct my friend Holden. So he's trying to teach me the ropes of screenwriting and how Hollywood works and all these things. So trying to do that. And I'm excited that schools, like you said, schools are about to start opening back up, and it's time to get back to teaching soon. And the summertime is coming. So hopefully I'm gonna try to get some funding and get back out there and get back teaching. So that's what's next for me.
Awesome. I love it. Now, if people want to keep up to date with you, find you, how's the best way to do all that?
Instagram and Twitter, like I'm a real personal person. Like I try to answer, I get a lot of DMs, like, and I try to answer all the DMs and answer all the questions. But if it is business, please email me. It's in my bio. But feel free, hit me up on the gram. I try to like talk to everybody, like I just got forced to get my first website. I never had a website. So I got forced to get one because I love just interacting with people through social media. But Devin Allen on Instagram, BYDVNLLN is the handle. It's just my name without vowels. I just wanted to be extra.
Awesome. Wonderful. Well, first and foremost, I want to thank you, Devin, for spending some time with us. I think everything that you're doing sounds and is absolutely amazing, and just super excited to see what's next for you, because I know that there's definitely a ton of good stuff that's going to be coming out from you, and I'm just excited for you, man. That's the honest truth. So really appreciate you taking the time with us. And I definitely want to give a huge thanks to our sponsors for the event, Leica, for setting this up. Without them, it wouldn't be possible to interact with wonderful people like this. So if you haven't already, go check Devin's work out, give him a follow on Instagram, Twitter, whatever, your social preference is. You can go for all of them. You can follow along on all that stuff. But Devin, thanks again so much for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Yep. Our absolute pleasure. For everybody at home, thanks for joining us. We hope you enjoyed this. Give us a follow on Instagram too. We're out there, BH Event Space. Keep up with us. This way, all these great events that we have coming at you. As always, free of charge. We do it out of the love for everybody. So thanks for joining us. This has been another edition of the